There are no shortage of secrets, Easter eggs, and rabbit holes to be found in Red Dead 2's biggest city, Saint Denis. But to find one of the most important and meaningful among them, you don't even need to look any further than the welcome sign. Hidden in plain sight, the city crest depicts a decapitated man carrying his own head. This man, and by extension the namesake of the entire city, is a real historical figure. Saint Denis, the first bishop and patron saint of Paris in the 3rd century AD. The story goes that Saint Denis was among the first Christian missionaries in modern-day France, which was under Roman rule at the time. The Romans didn't like Christianity much, and Saint Denis was yapping about it way too much, so they decided to resolve the conflict by lopping the dude's head off. But according to legend, the decapitated bishop picked up his head and walked several miles while preaching a sermon on repentance. Repentance meaning to feel or express sincere regret about one's wrongdoing or sin. We first see this referenced in Chapter 4, when Kieran is murdered by the O'Driscolls, who cut off his head and send him on horseback into the Vanderlyn gang's camp, heralding the ambush that comes immediately after.
Everybody take cover! O'Driscoll boys are coming!
The Saint Denisification of Kieran here is meant not only as an intimidation tactic, but also as a symbol of the repentance that the gang would have to undergo as a consequence of getting on the O'Driscolls' bad side.
Cowards!
But as you know, the ambush is unsuccessful, and we don't hear much about the O'Driscolls from here on out. Their presence as a threat is greatly diminished as the game shifts focus to other conflicts and challenges. But while the relevance of the O'Driscolls fades into the background, the relevance of the headless bishop comes even further into the foreground.
You got tuberculosis. Really sorry for you, son. It's a hell of a thing.
I ask you, dear audience, to consider Arthur Morgan as an analogy for the bishop Saint Denis. Both men have been handed a death sentence. In the bishop's case, it's literal, a beheading, but Arthur's death sentence comes in the form of a tuberculosis diagnosis. Arthur is, metaphorically, holding his head in his hands, fully aware of his own impending death. The head represents the burden of this knowledge which Arthur must carry. A renowned collection of saintly legends written in the 13th century, the Golden Legend, mentions, quote, an angel and a heavenly light, which guided Saint Denis as he delivered his post-mortem repentance sermon. I believe this angel is represented within the Red Dead story as Sister Calderone.
Are you okay?
Well, never better.
After his diagnosis, the sister serves as a moral and spiritual guide for Arthur. During their conversations, we see a different side of Arthur.
I had a son. He passed away. I had a girl who loved me. I threw that away. My mama died when I was a kid. And my daddy, well, I watched him die. And it weren't soon enough. What am I gonna do now?
Be grateful that for the first time, you see your life clearly.
Sure.
Perhaps you could help somebody. Helping makes you really happy.
Sister Calderone brings out the best in him, encouraging him to reflect on his past actions, and crucially, move on from them. After the ethical gray area that is the entire plot of Red Dead 2, she provides Arthur with moral clarity and serves as a catalyst for his internal transformation.
I'm afraid.
There is nothing to be afraid of, Mr. Morgan. Take a gamble that love exists and do a loving act.
All aboard!
Just like the angel and the heavenly light that guided Saint Denis, Sister Calderone sends Arthur on a journey of repentance. He attempts to atone for his sins in various ways as the focus of the game shifts toward Arthur coming to terms with his death and making a last-ditch effort to inject some positivity into the world. He does good deeds, such as returning the money he took from Edith Downs, the wife of the terminally ill man who gave him tuberculosis in the first place, or helping the Wapiti Indians stand up to injustice. But mostly, his repentance is simply realizing what's really important in this world. For Arthur's whole life, he considered the gang to be his family, his bond, and the worthy recipient of nearly all of his time and energy. But as Dutch unravels and the hopes of rekindling romance with his former love Mary are extinguished, he realizes his priorities had always been wrong. The harm done by the gang had always outweighed the good, and his allegiance to found family had gotten in the way of his instinct to create a family of his own. That's why Arthur's efforts in the final act of the game shift toward protecting John, Abigail, and their son Jack as he encourages them to run away from the gang. In the final mission before the epilogue, Arthur helps John escape, giving up his life in the process.
You gotta go. Go. Don't look back.
This is Arthur's version of Saint Denis preaching repentance in the final moments before he arrived at his resting place. It was too late for Arthur, but there was still time to push John toward the light, to give him what Arthur had never had: love, family, repentance, redemption.